Alright guys, we're back. We got Paine Cosmos. Gonna go with the double quizzes strategy with some delays. We're gonna be bringing Vayne as well for his delays. But you have to keep in mind that his EX is magic based. Same with Sephiroth. So Sephiroth hits the enemy. When they have bravery, they're gonna do the counterattack. So there's a lot to deal with in this fight. So we'll get to that once we get there. So these dinos, they open up with brave plus HP attack when they're targeting all. So you want to actually take them out pretty fast if you're not having a healer. The top units for this Cosmos is going to be Warrior of Light and Lenna. So you have to use them together though, because just using one of them is going to make the fight that much harder. Because there's a lot to deal with. You got Brave Shaping, you got their counter mechanic, and then they have debuff that lowers your maximum bravery by 50%. So there's a lot of stuff to deal with. That's why a lot of people are using the combination together of Warrior Light and Lenna. I tried a bunch of runs last night using just Warrior of Light without his EX weapon, but a lot of those teams didn't work out because they're lacking the damage output, and we still get debuffed by their curse debuff. Like Warrior of Light tanks it, but he still gets debuffed even though he has Elude buff up. And then it makes the fight that much more harder, and you can't heal the team without the EX weapon. But I used them together and the combination worked out fine, so you add in Lenna and she can prevent the debuffs and batter your team. So that's the most effective and safe approach to this Cosmos fight. But we're going to try a different strategy this time. We're going to be using a turn delay, cheesing with paralysis and silence with Agrias. So Agrias again, usable in Cosmos era, even though she came out months and months ago. Because her mechanic is very unique. No one else does the silence except Kefka, but he only prevents HP attacks. He doesn't prevent the brave attacks. But what you can do is actually use magic attacks on the bosses once they're paralyzed or they're silenced. That means they won't counter your units when they're either paralyzed or silenced. So you can actually make a pretty good team revolving around Agrias. When I did this fight, I actually realized that you can probably use Ashe as well, because Ashe paralyzes with her EX, and then all you have to do is target the same mob that's already paralyzed with Ashe. And that way, you know, they can't counter you and can do some good damage. And then you can summon, and then get your EX charged back up again. Okay, so this slime is pretty tanky. You want to actually dish out as much damage in a short amount of time as possible while delaying him with Vayne a couple of times, because once he does the self buff of Generate Body, it gets pretty tanky and he lowers your damage by quite a bit, and then he spawns the mobs again, which are annoying. Like, they just soak up AoE damage and stuff like that. It's not like their damage that matters, but the fact that they waste your time. Like Vayne, his EX is AoE, so his damage is going to be split if the mobs get generated again. Yeah, so when he's self-targeting, like right now, this is when you want to try to kill him in this phase. It's hard to do that without some heavy damage dealers or Vayne to delay him. Because I tried, when I did Warrior of Light and Lenna, they couldn't kill him before the phase. But they have enough battery to just sustain through and push through. So here, Vayne gets some free turns. His EX is charged, so we don't have to use any skills to waste, because it's going to be a long fight, so you want to extend the longevity as much as you can. Yeah, just throw the HP attacks and then open up with the EX at the end. Get his stacks back up. Okay, for quizzes, I'm going to save most of the whips for the end. Save all of them actually, because we're going to need them to slow down the bosses at the end. And there's going to be some finesse involved in the last wave, because this team is going to be revolving around playing around their turns and them being paralyzed or silenced. So if they're not silenced or paralyzed, can't really do Vayne's EX move because he's going to get countered, which means he's going to get broken, and then they do a one-hit KO HP attack. So really you have to wait for Agrias to cover your team to make sure that you're paralyzed or silence both of them, then you can do your EX ability. So you may have to pass several rounds with Vayne, but that's just how the strategy is going to work out. Okay, and that's all the waves, and now we're up to the boss. So I did have to reset because it's hard to figure out the strategy at first, but then once you get it down, it's pretty easy to grasp. So you don't actually have to summon right away. When I did summon right away and silence with Agrias, their first attack was the spear attack, which is the melee attack, and that would also break my unit and end up killing them. So what you want to do is actually not summon the first round. They do their magic attack first. I believe they start opening up with the spear attack when they're at a lower threshold of HP. So we can just delay a bit and hold off on summon until at least round 2. But we can pop Agrias EX ability cover for Vayne's EX. You see they can't counter because they're silenced. And both of them can't attack, so they open up with the magic attack. And now we're free to actually summon and rebuild Agrias' EX charge, so she can silence them again and get some lucky paralysis like right there on A. So because A is paralyzed, we're gonna be throwing out Degen Whips on B to make this fight a little bit easier to handle. Because A's knocked out of the picture, so we're just gonna keep delaying and focusing down on B while Agrias charges her EX, and then she can just come back and stun both of them in time for Vayne to pop his EX again. So it's a constant cycle and loop of running in circles around the enemy and not letting them do anything. So we're gonna pop summon right here and just try to do as much damage on B as possible while delaying him back far because A is paralyzed, so A is effectively out of 1 round and Vayne is free to do his EX once Agrias gets the EX off. Also keep in mind you can use magic EX abilities or any magic attacks during summon because it's counted as your phase, but the enemy doesn't actually counter during this time. So you can use things like Sephiroth EX ability or Vayne's EX ability. The enemy doesn't have to be paralyzed or silenced. Just gonna pop his EX ability right here because it's charged and we can do some good damage while refreshing the charge by using his abilities afterwards. Okay, so Agrias EX ability is up, but what we're gonna do is save it for after the next phase. So after A moves, basically, that's when we're gonna pop the silence attack, because otherwise it's a waste because A's already paralyzed. And Vayne just used his EX ability back there, so the charge is still going and we don't need him to pop it right away. So just a couple of things to keep an eye out in this fight is Vayne's EX ability and Agrias' EX ability. You have to really be on top of the charges and what the enemies are doing and where they are. So again, we're just gonna save it, even though we have to use an ability first. I'm gonna keep her EX ability for the next round after A moves and gets rid of the paralysis. And one more skill will open up for Vayne's EX ability. But what we can do is actually use Mach Wave last and then use the EX on the next round. So he won't gain 3 stacks right away, but that's okay. You want it more for utility and refreshing the abilities than just dealing as much damage, you know, as efficiently as possible. Okay, so now it's back up. They're both silenced. We saved the EX and now we can use it. No fear of retaliation. So again, our goal is to focus down one of them first, and that's going to be B. Keep in mind that right now they're doing their melee spear attack, most likely. That's why we have to watch out for getting breaks. But we have Quistis at the end there, so Quistis can use a whip and battery our team, and then we won't get broken from her battery, because they're both targeting 2 separate people. You have to watch, if they're targeting the same person, you're going to need like 14k or more bravery to prevent getting broken, because they can do 8k or something like that. So it's very tricky. You need a lot of finesse to work around this matchup if you're not bringing Warrior of Light or Lenna. Okay, so now they're both topped off, but Agrias doesn't get attacked until 3 turns later, so she's free to use her ability to charge her EX faster. Okay, so that one was doing a magic attack. but you can't really be sure like which attack they're using. If it's the spear attack, which is melee, or if it's the magic attack. So you just have to play a little bit safe, but usually after the first round they're going to be doing a lot more melee attacks. Okay, one more ability used here, and then Agrias can use her EX charge. But keep in mind she's being targeted by A, so unless Vayne is going to delay or help her out here, then it's not going to work out. So you see Vayne's out of delays, so we have to play a little bit safe there with Agrias and Brave Attack. You're going to have to Brave Attack here because he's getting targeted. Quistis, you want to burn the whip again because you have to weave in her EX ability or she's going to run out of longevity. And we're going to throw whips as much as we can as well. Make sure the debuffs are on both of the bosses because it lowers their turn rate as well. And it lowers their speed a little bit. So you get more turns before they move. Okay, so we're going to have the EX up for this round from Agrias, so Vayne will be free to use his EX ability. And then once you knock one of them out, we can just whip the last one and he'll never see a turn again. Okay, here we go. We got the silence on both of them. We got Vayne's EX follow up right afterwards. And then we got the last whip from Quistis. And then we can sub her out for the friend Quistis. And that match is going to be smooth sailing from there. So this fight is kind of hard in my opinion. It's not that difficult if you have the right units, but mechanically it's very hard and you need a lot of strategy and tactics to actually beat this, especially without Warrior of Light to help you out, without Lenna to help you out with the debuffs. Very restrictive as well in magic users. A lot of our magic roster is very strong and they're meta, like Renoa, Sarah, and Ashe as supports. They're all magic users, Rydia's even magic. So it's really hard to actually make a team that can beat this and deal with all their mechanics. Even Sephiroth and Vayne have magic EX abilities, so they're gonna get countered every time they use them, unless you bring Warrior of Light. But if you bring Warrior of Light, they can still get debuffed, so that means you need Lenna as well. So it's really tricky. Or you can bring Paralysis. Some people have been using Cloud. I'm showcasing Agrias here. So there's some good options still, but you do need these you need units to deal with, you know, their mechanics this time. It's not just a straight DPS raise or just bring a healer. It's pretty tricky. Okay, Vayne gets 3 turns. We can use his last ability here. Make sure to use his ability when he has 0 stacks, that way he gains stacks. And then Agrias can just throw her ability out there and build some charge. Here we get the last ability from Vayne. And we're gonna have to wait one more turn. So it didn't quite work out in the turn order, because Vayne is gonna move before Agrias moves. So he's going to not be able to use his EX ability, because the enemy is not paralyzed or silenced. If you use one of those, if you use that EX skill, you're gonna die. So don't do that. That's what happened to me, and I had to reset. Just take it slow. You can probably beat this 90 turns or something, a little bit below the 100 turn count requirement. Okay, he's silenced. We got the last delay here, and he's just gonna go down. We got the EX refresh from Vayne, just in time to refresh his buffs. He's gonna lose his unique buff, but he gains it back right away as soon as he uses the second ability. Okay, and our last Quistis come in to finish the fight. Quistis has surprising longevity for being such an old unit. You'll never see her run out of abilities. She has so many laser whips that she can just throw out. Alright, and that's it, the Paine Cosmos. see you guys at the next event. Take care.